These days, Sweden finds itself at a perilous crossroads. The rise of the far-right Sweden Democrats has ignited a fierce immigration debate, shaking the foundations of its humanitarian legacy. As riots erupt and crime rates soar, questions swirl. Is Sweden on the brink of division? Can it uphold its welfare state while tightening its borders? The stakes have never been higher. Join us as we explore the complexities of Sweden's immigration landscape, where every decision could redefine its future. Sweden's immigration story has reached a critical crossroads. Once a peaceful haven welcoming outsiders, it now faces significant demographic changes. For centuries, Sweden opened its arms, but nothing prepared it for the recent wave of asylum seekers arriving on its shores. In the early 2000s, the first signs appeared. Desperate people from Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan began arriving, testing the limits of Swedish hospitality. Then came 2015, the year everything changed. Sweden became Europe's leader in accepting refugees, taking in more asylum seekers per capita than any other nation. But this surge brought challenges. Resources were stretched thin, and integration wasn't as smooth as hoped. As public sentiment shifted, the government made a dramatic U-turn. Stricter immigration and asylum rules were introduced to better manage the situation and promote integration. But what does this mean for Sweden's cultural identity and social cohesion in the long run? The peak of 2015, when Sweden opened its doors wide, feels like a distant memory. But what does the landscape look like today? In a shocking change, asylum applications fell to just 19,727 in 2022, a dramatic drop from the 163,000 who sought refuge just 7 years earlier. This decline isn't a sign of peace. It's a desperate reaction to the government tightening its grip on immigration. The doors have slammed shut, leaving many hopeful refugees stranded in despair. Now, nearly 20% of Sweden's 10.6 million people are foreign-born, and that number jumps to 26% when you include those with foreign-born parents. This significant change has strained resources and stirred tension within communities. The very identity of Sweden is at risk. The financial impact is staggering. In 2016, Sweden spent a jaw-dropping $6 billion on refugee support, over 5% of its entire national budget. This huge expense has left the country struggling, as the job market finds it hard to absorb new arrivals. Unemployment among immigrants is alarmingly high, casting a shadow over the lives of many. Even though Sweden is considered one of the top countries for helping newcomers, it faces serious challenges. Language classes and job training programs are struggling to keep up. The big question remains: how can Sweden balance its values of kindness with the tough realities of integrating so many people? Now let's take a closer look at the challenges Sweden is facing and explore some data that highlights the severity of the situation. In 2021, Sweden was shaken by 344 shootings, resulting in 46 deaths, largely driven by gang conflicts in cities like Stockholm and Malmö. Most alarming, children as young as 14 are being drawn into this deadly spiral, with a sharp rise in serious crimes among teenagers aged 15 to 17. Sweden's once-renowned education system is crumbling. By 2015, PISA scores in math and science had fallen to average levels, a stark contrast to their former glory. The widening performance gap between native and immigrant students has become a chasm, threatening the future of an entire generation. The rising tide of crime is sending shockwaves through Sweden's economy. International talent is turning away, scared off by safety concerns. Meanwhile, the employment gap between native and foreign-born residents is the widest among 28 OECD countries, a stark reminder of the nation's integration struggles. Perhaps most troubling are the especially vulnerable areas, urban enclaves where law and order struggle to prevail. These no-go zones are marked by high unemployment, poor Swedish language skills, and limited integration. The stark reality is that law enforcement struggles in these zones, often needing extra protection. In 2015, around 35% of foreign-born residents lacked sufficient literacy and numeracy skills, compared to just 5% of native-born citizens. The immigration debate in Sweden has erupted into a fierce battleground, exposing deep societal divisions that threaten to tear the nation apart. In 2022, the rise of the Sweden Democrats, a powerful anti-immigration party, marked a seismic shift in the political landscape. Securing 20% of the vote in the general election, they sent shockwaves through the country, reflecting a growing public outcry over immigration issues that can no longer be ignored. In response, the government has unleashed a wave of stricter policies. Asylum applications have plummeted to alarming lows, with 2023 recording the fewest since 1997. New regulations have tightened the screws on both asylum seekers and labor migrants. Work permit applicants now face a daunting hurdle. They must earn at least 80% of the gross median salary to even be considered. But the burning question remains: will these harsh measures bring true unity, or are they just more empty promises that will leave communities torn apart? The economic impact of immigration in Sweden has been a subject of intense debate and research. While immigration has brought both challenges and opportunities, the overall picture is complex. On the labor front, immigrants face a steep and unforgiving climb toward integration. The numbers tell a sobering story. Even after 15 long years in Sweden, refugee employment rates stagnate at just 64% for men and 59% for women, a stark contrast to the over 80% employment rate among native Swedes. The fiscal implications are equally unsettling. While immigrants contribute to the pension system and bolster the labor force, they also introduce costs. In 2018, a study dropped a bombshell, asserting that refugee immigration has a net negative fiscal impact in both the short and long term, sending shockwaves through economic circles. As Sweden grapples with the economic and social dynamics of immigration, recent policy changes reflect a significant shift in the government's approach. In 2021, the government implemented stricter requirements for obtaining permanent residency. Immigrants must prove self-sufficiency and endure a 3-year waiting period before even daring to dream of permanence. The income threshold for work permits has skyrocketed, more than doubling overnight. This astronomical leap from $1,269 to $2,672 per month has effectively slammed the door on countless aspiring workers. Additionally, Sweden has dramatically reduced its refugee resettlement quota. The dramatic plunge from 5,000 in 2022 to a mere 900 in 2023 speaks volumes about the nation's shifting priorities. In a notable development, 2023 marked the first instance of net emigration in Sweden in 50 years. The government has proposed offering up to $34,000 to certain migrants as an incentive to return to their home countries, starting in 2026. These changes signify a shift towards more restrictive immigration measures, aiming to address integration challenges while responding to public sentiment regarding immigration. As Sweden wrestles with the tough challenges of integration amid major policy changes, public opinion and the media are fiercely reshaping the immigration debate. Research reveals a clear shift. Swedish media coverage of immigration has become increasingly negative. Between 2010 and 2015, major newspapers filled their pages with adverse reports, not just reflecting but molding how people think. Public sentiment has changed dramatically. In just 2 months, from September to November, the percentage of Swedes believing their country accepts too many refugees soared from 29% to a staggering 41%. This sudden spike exposes a raw nerve in the national mood, ready to ignite at any moment. Adding fuel to the fire, social media has tangled the conversation, turning into a battleground where support and opposition clash, often pushing the debate to its extremes. Sweden is at a critical turning point, and its future immigration policy is full of tension. Is Sweden moving toward nationalism? With over 20% of its population now born abroad, the pressure to blend different cultures is growing, sparking fears of division and unrest. Recent riots have rocked the nation, making many question if integration policies are working. The far-right Sweden Democrats are gaining ground, demanding stricter measures that threaten Sweden's humanitarian legacy. How are traditional parties responding to this rightward shift? As gang violence escalates, can Sweden maintain its welfare state model while tightening immigration controls? The stakes are high. Will the nation emerge united or spiral into a future marked by conflict and social fragmentation? Only time will tell.